Hi everyone, welcome back to Farrand Film, and today we are bringing you part two of our top 10 video games. We've done 10 to 6. I'm going to kick us off with my number 5. My number 5, I feel like when I wrote it on the list, I thought, oh, here we go. This is Adam just being a basic, whatever. But I really like it. So 2009, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Now it's not the recent one. I mean, I like the recent one, mainly because they've added all these mental guns, and you get to go in and you play the maps from the original Modern Warfare 2. But this game was so vast, and it's like I feel like I'm like old man syndrome now of going games these days. You don't get enough, In the with Modern Warfare 2, you had a single player campaign, you had the online multiplayer, you had the offline multiplayer, and you had Spec Ops. And the idea of Spec Ops is that you could go in and do single player missions and then do multiplayer missions as well. There was so
Mm.
much to do on this game to the point where like I'd do the single player campaign at least a couple of times. There was always people playing in the lobbies for the online multiplayer. And then Spec Ops, like me and my mate would go into Spec Ops all the time and just try and do it. But like especially the harder ones where it was like 15 juggernauts are gonna come at you. Like, are you
On the
gonna?
oil rig.
Yeah, like try and put as many claymores out as you possibly can do.
One guy
Um,
just spamming the Barrett, just like get a bunch of
that was
headshots.
literally it. Like we referred to it as Big Pig in like the whole like Lion King thing. In that like he'd be up there with his Barrett, I'd be down there putting as many claymores down as possible, and then I'd go so far up to trigger the Juggernaut.
You
But then
do that weird
sometimes
didgeridoo.
well, no, but sometimes you wouldn't even get the dum dum. Sometimes you'd just be stood there waiting for you, and you'd get shot to West until, and then he's got to come and save you. So you just keep doing that all the time.
Mm.
I remember one of them I fluked massively. It was one of the ones where, where like the restaurant is and the diner and all that kind of stuff. I picked up a rocket launcher and just shot it straight off the bat, and it blew up a van that was carrying all the sort of enemy people in, and we did it in about 30 seconds. And I was like, how have we managed that? But no, I loved it. Loved that game. But then even like Call of Duty as a series, like the Modern Warfare ones to me have always been my preference. And especially when they rebooted them as well, because I think even the rebooted campaigns have been fantastic. They're so cinematic, the way that they look. And bringing Makarov back and doing all that kind of stuff. Never been too much of a fan of Black Ops. Ghosts is one that people seem to go back to. I really liked Advanced Warfare, and Advanced Warfare gets a bad rap, but I love Exo Zombies, which is probably the reason why. Like trying to spam a 3D printer just to get a decent gun and not keep getting the crossbow all the time. Um, but yeah, I love it. And this is the game where if Amy was to come back from work and I was playing Call of Duty and doing a lot of shooting, she'd be like, "Who's annoyed you today?" And the conversation would then go from there. Yeah, so that's my number
I think
5.
I think people forget just how like they were rightly celebrated around that kind of Modern Warfare 2, Black Ops time. I know that was two different developers, and I know that World at War's in there as well. But that era of Call of Duty was rightly celebrated.
Mm,
Like they were stunning games. The
yeah,
remasters for Modern Warfare 2, have you played them as well?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They are stunning. Like, and
Mhm.
it just like none of the magic is lost in it. I remember like hooking my Xbox 360 up recently and playing Black Ops again. It's like, oh, this is because I think Black Ops might be my favorite,
Yeah.
mainly because I love the story in it. But I know what you mean. Like Modern Warfare 2, I think it's become a bit of a meme as well that Modern Warfare, like Call of Duty, has to do something shocking. But I think people forget just how impactful it was to have that nuke dropped on you in the first one.
Oh, but then
Player
like
chat is shocking enough, isn't it?
yeah,
You don't
Yeah,
really need to do anything. Just 5 seconds of that, and you're scarred for life.
yeah.
but then
I
the
learned swear words I didn't know existed in that chat.
And like that aftermath where there's that very short level where you survived the crash and you're just in the nuclear apocalypse of this unnamed Middle Eastern country. It's
the
horrifying.
the no Russian level, like that
Yeah.
was the first game where I played something and it comes up at the beginning and it says, "Do you wish to
Yeah.
Like, do you want to skip this level? Do you want
I couldn't
to?
stand the controversy around that because they literally give you the option to skip it, and killing civilians is not given as an objective. You don't have to do it.
Oh
You can
yeah,
shoot no one during that if you win. So it's on you. The
yeah,
reason it generated anything is it's similar to Spec Ops: The Line. Like, it got a lot of negative press because it made you ask uncomfortable questions of yourself as a gamer. Is what you're doing actually right? And it what like people was like, oh, they just put it in for shock value. It's
Oh,
like, well, no, they
it's
did
not
it
all
because
right.
yeah, that's the point. It's not okay. Like, and you've got to think about that, and you've got to ruminate on that.
yeah.
Just deal with it.
But no, I still play Modern Warfare now. I mean, it's all kind of morphed into this big thing where you can access all three games through the one sort of Call of Duty icon. Kids at work are always talking about Warzone. I don't have time for Warzone.
Yeah,
I'm like,
no.
I'm not interested in a 64 person whatever it is. And
Yeah.
like, some kids the other day were talking to me about they were going, "What kind of gun do you use in it?" And I said, "Well, I use a shotgun and an assault rifle." And they're like, "Yeah, but is it the SMG 467?" And I'm like, "I don't know."
I
I'm
could
not looking
probably
at
name
the
the guns, to be fair.
I'm not
I'm
looking at
one
the
of them.
names of them. I
Yeah.
look at where it says range, accuracy, and
It's really
damage.
important.
Yeah,
So I used to play Warzone quite a lot with Sam, and if you weren't using the right gun, you just weren't winning matchups.
yeah, yeah,
Like, and every now and again, I would give in and I would play the meta gun, and it just meant that suddenly I could win firefights that I couldn't before. And I think that's why now it's like, well, do you play this gun? Because if you're doing well and you're not playing that gun, then you're obviously really good. Because if you are, you kind of have to play the meta. But
yeah.
yeah,
Warzone was just
Warzone's
their
a
attempt
pretty
to like kind of Fortnite as well, wasn't it? Because
Oh
Fortnite
yeah,
just blew up
yeah,
in
yeah.
popularity. Whereas that is never why I would get. I've never got a Call of Duty because it's like, oh, look at all the multiplayer features. I don't care. Like, I want a single player campaign. I'll play like a local multiplayer against like a family member or something, but I'm not interested in playing against 12-year-olds who do just that and then teabag you and make sexual comments about your mum. Like, I'm not interested in that side of any game,
I do it for
frankly.
the single player campaign, but then like you were saying before, like it is my game to veg out to,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
And to be fair, I've done that thing. I'm a marketing man's dream. I've fallen into the skins that you can buy. Like
Uh,
I've got the Timothy Chalamet skin from Dune,
yeah, I
I've got
don't.
Floyd Rather.
They don't have gun. Well, they have the odd gun, but their whole thing is machete.
I know, but I
You're
like the chip
breaking
and
you're
shatter
breaking that
finishing.
June law.
I know. Soz. Yeah, so that's my number five. Holly, what's your number five?
Already mentioned in part one by you, Adam, Pokemon Red and Blue.
E
It's the Big Daddy. It was so immersive. It dragged you in with multiple different mechanics, like your need to collect, your need to beat bosses consistently, and they come up throughout the game quite quickly. The need to grind to get good enough to go through the next tunnel or go through the next field of bird catchers or whatever. The thing I never ever got about it is that every area just has the same sort of people. So like in the forest, there's just like loads of people who catch bugs. And then in the field, there's loads of people who are really into cats.
All the
And I
geologists
just,
are in the
it's
tunnel.
so, it's American high school, but
Kept in the dark and fed on.
country.
Yeah.
Everyone on the cruise ship really, really likes dogs and have brought like 3 dogs with them, and they're all dressed the same as well. Yeah, I don't have a lot to say about Pokemon. Everyone who's into games has had an experience with one of these games. This is the original. It's the best. Check it out if you haven't.
It's great. It's great. Oliver, you're number five.
You've mentioned this one as well to a point,
Oh.
because I have got to get my Crash Bandicoot game in there because it is my opening gambit with gaming on my own console. I am going to start off thoroughly disagreeing with your pick though, mainly because I just think like Crash Bandicoot is a very primitive game. And like when you look at where it went as a series, it's kind of obvious like it should have been from the get-go. Like, it is quite limited in what you can do in the first one, and especially if you're playing the original version on PlayStation, the idea that to get the gem, you've also got to not die once in the level. And that's also the only way you can actually save the game when memory cards had existed for however long. It is just a bit primitive. And like, you've got this system where you get loads and loads of lives dead easily, and that's great, but you're not allowed to die once in the game anyway, unless if you're going for completion. And I get that might not be everyone doing this, but I've kind of mentioned it before. I don't like it when completing the base game is dead easy, but then going that extra mile to get 100% is way too hard. I need there to be a bit more parity between the two. And it was going to be one of the original three. It was never going to be the first one. So I had to choose between 2 and 3. And one thing that puts me off 3 are the time trials. I get why they've included them. From a gameplay perspective, it is an interesting way to retackle the levels. It's just not how I like to play Crash. And Crash 2 holds a soft spot in my heart for being literally the first ever game I 100% completed. And there is something satisfying about figuring out all the ways to get to the secret warp room in that game to access all of the gems. And they got rid of the idea of you have to stay alive throughout the level to, keep the gem. And sometimes that was necessary. Well, I say necessary, but like sometimes you needed to, in fact, no, it was necessary. There was the odd level where you had to go into like the no death route to get some boxes in there and then come back, get a save, get a jet. Like that one cold hard Crash, you had to die to kind of reset and get both gems at the same time, because that's the only way you can really do it.
Never mind the sort of trickiness of the nitro boxes and and stuff.
And they were a really interesting dynamic. And I can't remember on the original version, on the PAL version anyway, whether you had to sit like, so let's say you had a nitro box next to a standard box. I can't remember whether flipping the nitro switch at the end would destroy that box or whether you had to see that happen. Because I remember that being a weird little glitch. And there's a number of levels where there's one box missing and it's that one.
Yeah.
But I think that one's quite fair generally. Once you know some of the individual little tricks that they play, that one's probably the fairest in terms of 100% completing. And I got to a point, I remember I was on holiday and I had my PlayStation over there because it was my dad's apartment. I had my PlayStation over there and I could, in about 3 hours, 100% from start to finish, 100% complete Crash Bandicoot. I just think the controls are dead tight. I love the music in it. I love the boss fights in it. I think they're much better than the first one. Mind you, I do think 3 has the best boss fights. So I have considered, like, my favorite boss fight in any Crash game is Coco in a spaceship shooting an engine in his giant mech suit that becomes this giant space station. That is the best boss fight in any Crash game. I'll fight anyone who disagrees. But and like that, this is the game that introduced Clancy Brown as Cortex. My boy Clancy Brown, he made it into my top 10 favorite actors. And a lot of it is based off of this performance. He's amazing as Cortex. As much as I love Brendan O'Brien in the first one, Brendan O'Brien did a much better job doing like Embryo and Engine and some of the other characters. Clancy Brown as Cortex was unbelievable. But yeah, Crash 2, I think, is my go-to definitive Crash game. And I think I prefer the original to the remake, just because I like the sort of angular, janky-looking graphics in that one. Whereas I agree with you, I think the remaster of the first game is definitely the way to play it, because it gets rid of that stupid, there's only certain levels you've got to make it through all the way without dying to get the gem. And I kind of like that as a thing to get the colored gems to give you access to other bits of the levels.
Yeah.
But I do think by Crash 2, they'd ironed out exactly what kind of game they wanted to be. And then it was just tweaking it for a bit. It then got tired by the time you get to Wrath of Cortex. But
then I think It's About Time is
incredible. Again, there is a bit too much of a disparity there, though, between just base completing it, getting through all the levels, and getting all of the collectibles. I think getting everything in that game is way too hard.
Yeah.
Way too hard. But it is a gorgeous game to play, and I love that you can get all the skins with it and stuff like that. I love like the mechanics of how you get gems. There's more than one way to get them. There's one hidden in every level. There's one for dying less than 3 times. There's one for getting all the boxes, and then there's 3 for getting enough Wumpa fruit throughout the level. But it does play gorgeous. I think the same team are potentially working on a Spyro 4, which I'm very excited for, because the Reignited trilogy was just for a game I wasn't even that, because I was a bit nostalgic over the first Spyro, but I remember not being able to get that far because I was just an idiot who didn't play it properly. And playing the Reignited trilogy, it's just like these games are incredible, and I cannot wait for a 4th one. But yeah, Crash 2.
Your list is very sequel heavy so far.
Yeah, I think because games lend themselves to that a bit more than films, don't they? Like like the whole point of the sequel, there's no point making a sequel unless it's improved upon the original.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
think that's what, like, one of mine later on is fundamentally a series thing, but it gets built on,
I've got one later where it is the first one, but it's only because I haven't played the second. And I think the second, from what I've heard, would trounce it in this.
Okay.
But we'll get there when we get there.
Michael, your number 5, please.
Attention. I know it is. I'm going to preface it by saying I've played every Pokemon game except X and Y to completion, full Pokédex. These days I pay for Pokemon Home so I can store all my shinies. Like, absolutely love it. But the one that is always going to be the one that I love the most, always going to be Crystal. And it's because Susine is still, to this day, I think, one of the best designs for a legendary. It's just simple, but it just like looks cool. For me, it just works really well. But also because it's the first one where they all had unique animations. And as small a thing that is, me and my friend at the time who played it lost our minds over the fact the Pokemon didn't disappear. They moved a little bit as well. And everyone, there was somewhere like the male and female had a different animation. So you had to catch both to be a completionist. And I think part of this is, by the time I got a Game Boy, like red and blue had been out for ages. And I think Gold and Silver came out maybe about a week later. So I started playing Gold and Silver and then went back and played Red and Blue in order to get a Mewtwo to trade over to Gold and Silver. And then Crystal is just Gold and Silver kind of perfected. Like the unknown is dealt with better and stuff like that. And I think the third entry has always been the one I've liked the most. Like Emerald is better than Diamond and Pearl, etc. I don't think that's a controversial take at all. I think most people would agree they do quite well there. And yeah, I just think it was the whole, and I still to this day, as much as Kanto was just a bit of an add-on that they didn't know what they were doing with, I still to this day would pay so much money for a well-made Pokemon game that had every single zone in one game. Basically, if they ever make a Pokemon MMO, they could charge £100 a month and I'll pay it. I mean, I probably shouldn't put that into the universe.
No, don't.
But I would absolutely play, because like Pal World came out recently, which is like Minecraft with Pokemon, with so many like Ark Survival Evolved built in, and it just showed how good you could make a game using the Pokemon IP. Like if they decided to allow other people to use their IP to make other kinds of games on like consoles that had more power, it's because it's very formulaic now. The later Pokemons don't bring the same joy. I think I just play them out of, well, it's the new Pokemon game, of course I've got to play it.
Yeah.
And it certainly doesn't have the joy it once had. And I think Crystal's one that like everyone I knew played it. Every single one of my friends, we were all at the same time, we all loved it just as much. And that was the one that we all played to completion. We were all trading with each other. that was the first one where I got a shiny because of Red Guy. Well, no, gold, obviously. Red Gyarados, the guaranteed one. But yeah, and then I was like, oh, I've got to get shinies now. I didn't know this was a thing. I don't know if it was in the original games. Maybe it was. I can't remember. But I didn't know it was a thing properly until till Gold and Silver. And then I was like, I need all the shinies now. And yeah, it was just a moment in time.
Ruby's being loud. Right. It's fine. Number 4 is Holly. Do you want to kick us off with your number 4?
It's my most recent game on the list. It's 2020. It's Hades by Supergiant Games. I don't think anyone has mentioned a roguelike yet. So it's not a genre that I like very much. But roguelikes are where you have to do the entire game in one go. You can't save. So you do the beginning to the end, and the game gets progressively harder and you keep dying, but you just have to learn how to get past that point. So it's kind of the definition of get good as a game. Hades is called by some people a roguelite because every time you die, you do kind of save at that point, because you don't just learn how to get further in the game as a player. Your player character learns how to get through the game a little bit as well. So you do earn experience points. You can buy better weapons. You can make allies in your kind of home base that you go to when you die. And you remember what your character remembers, what they've learned. You are Prince Zagreus. Your player character is Prince Zagreus, who is the mythical figure who was believed to be the son of Hades and Persephone. You are in the underworld. There's a lot of Greek myth trappings, some of which is authentic and some of which is kind of tweaked and made up to fit the narrative of the game. But Persephone has left the underworld. Hades is very sad and missing his wife. And you're very sad and missing your mother. So you're trying to battle your way out of the underworld to find her. And there are 3 distinct parts of the underworld, and then there's a kind of smaller area just as you're at the gates as well. Each area has different bosses, different traps, different dangers that you've got to just slowly learn about, because every time you die, you get sent right back to the beginning of the underworld, your dad's house, and then you start getting out again, and it's a big old labyrinth. And I'm never in games for solely the gameplay. I'm always there for a story. Even if I'm playing like The Sims or something, I make a storyline with my family that I'm playing as. So I have to have a story there. And Hades has a fantastic story, but I think it's the only game I'm there because the gameplay is amazing. When you are battling through one little room trying to get to the next one, and you know how much work you've done to get to this point, you've never got this far before. This might be the run. This might be the time you actually get out. The stakes of, making a silly mistake and stepping in a trap are so high. I think I'm not a good player of games. I'm not good at all. I never do things on hard mode. I tend to just go on normal difficulty mode on everything. I was on normal difficulty mode on this. The average number of runs you have to do in this game to win, there's a lot more after you win. But to get out of the underworld and actually find your mum for the first time is 37. And it took me 50. So I'm not a top tier player here. But that 50th time, that time where I was on the last boss and I knew that there is one more door and my mum is on the other side of that door, I was about to have an actual literal heart attack. Jules was in the room watching rugby and he was just staring at me like, what is happening on your computer? And I was just like, I can't speak. And when I did get out, I cried. I cried from relief that the amount of work I'd just done to get out had finally paid off, and I'd done it. And the game rewards you very, very strongly and emotionally for managing to do it as well. It is an absolutely wonderful gameplay experience. The writing is top notch. Supergiant Games are fabulous at writing. Their music is superb. We teach Greek myths to our year sevens on the English syllabus, and I play the music for the game in the background when we're reading the stories, because the music is all inspired by the Greek myths and Eurydice and stuff, but then is hardcore metal at the same time. It's really, it's really, really good. If you look up Darren Korb is the sound director for Supergiant Games, who makes all the music and also voices a lot of the characters. He's an superbly talented person, and I have the Supergiant Games Songs of Supergiant Games CD, and it is very, very good, and all the music from this game is very, very good. But the game itself is top notch, and you should absolutely give them your money, because they are fully independent, very, very against lots of the nasty practices in computer games, like microtransactions, like crunch, things that are really harmful to game developers. They're doing it right. They take their time over their games, and it shows. This is a masterpiece for sure.
Good, nice. I've not heard of it. I might have to.
I've heard of Hades. Yeah,
it's brilliant, Adam.
Yeah,
absolutely get it, and I hope you enjoy it.
Oliver, you're number 4.
Would it be a pain to change up the order? Because I'm thinking, in the interest of saving time, especially on something this long, my 3 and my 4 go together quite nicely.
Fine. Yeah, fine. Michael, you're number 4. I missed that completely then.
Your AI is kicking in again, Michael.
So is this because this microphone? I've got a new microphone, and this has yet another. There's yet another layer of software now between this, and it's just ridiculous. But it is. I do like it. It's quite pretty. But yeah, so it's a franchise essentially, which is the Fallout franchise, and I wasn't going to include it because there's another thing by the same developer, but I have. Simply because the first Fallout game I played was
I wonder
Fallout
what
1.
that game is.
But because Fallout 1 was the first one I played, and that was Interplay, that was an isometric, and then Fallout 2. So I was into this franchise way before Bethesda got their hands onto it.
There's been so many hipster moments from you today, Michael. I was into Minecraft before it was cool.
It's just because I've been a nerd for so long. You know, this is my identity. This is who I am, and I'm not ashamed.
You cool people are appropriating my culture.
I did have a brief period between about 15 and 17 where I wanted to be cool.
Yeah. I've just Googled Bethesda because I didn't know what you were talking about, and now I think I do.
Yeah.
And so the one I've actually gone for, the one that I think is objectively the best, and to preface this, it's not the one with the highest playtime, because if I look at my playtime, Fallout 4 has the highest.
But it's a bigger game, isn't it? So of course it is.
It is, and gameplay-wise, it's the better game. And every now and again, me and Lewis will boot it up at the same time and see who can complete it first, like on a given ending, on a given route, and we try and race each other to the end. He stopped doing that because he never wins. But the objectively best one for me is Fallout New Vegas.
Yeah.
And again, not at all a hot take. I think that's, pretty standard because it's just so good. The story's so good. And you kind of not a silent protagonist, but you get to pick what the kind of protagonist, you get to project yourself onto the character. But the fact that this is the one where, like 1 and 2, the way you've built the character locks and unlocks certain ways of completing the game. Like if you are qualified, you know, you've done up your medicine skills, there might be a point where you can heal someone. Where if you get there and you haven't done up those skills or they're dying, tough. That conversation is now gone. And I think the fact that each DLC alone, other than Sierra Madre, because that can go and die, but the other three DLCs alone, storyline wise, are better than some full games. I know everyone goes on about Lonesome Road being the like apex of Fallout storytelling. It is very good, but like even like the Big Empty, like the brain robots and like their story and kind of going around this kind of what they would see as a paradise, but like these like proper super nerds who like built a high school that they think is how a high school should run. But it's just so, as Fallout does, it takes all these good ideas and goes, yeah, what if the bad thing happened, like the worst possible outcome happened?
The vaults
what
are
if corruption?
objectively hilarious throughout as well. It's like, what if we pumped
Oh
this
yeah,
one full
absolutely.
of psychoactive drugs? What if we had this vault where a guy called Gary clones himself repeated numbers of times? What if we had this
I
vault
love
where
the
we put
Gary
in the
vault.
musicians, but we tried to train them to be assassins? Like,
And I think it is very cruel. I think the vault experiment, especially like the one that really gets me, and I think because I've known a lot of people who've suffered with addiction in my life, is there's a vault full of addicts where they cure them all of their addiction, and they're all living really well. They're all getting on. They've all moved on with their lives, and then all they do 5 years later is they unlock a room full of drugs. Every drug amount is just full of it. And within months, obviously, that entire vault, everyone's dead.
yeah.
And it's like, and the thing is, like, that kind of stuff has happened in reality in not exactly the same way, but this kind of curing people just to see what will happen if you like have addiction, just no, not curing them, but helping them just to see what happens if you put temptation in front of them again. These are experiments that have really happened, but just taken to that so much worse degree. And it does shine a light on that dark side of humanity and of scientific interest and of capitalism if you don't have regulation. You know, and I think that 1950s view of the future that we're in. So it's not, this isn't the future, it's what the 1950s thought the future would be with the 1940s, 50s music and a couple of 80s, 90s songs that have the same vibe. It's just so good. Like all of the games are really good. Even Fallout 76, which I know people kind of talk down to, but even that is a really fun game, especially now with the updates. And I do like an MMO, to be fair. But I feel like Fallout New, if they were going to make a remaster of any of them, New Vegas is the one I would want. 100%. It's just so good. And to play it without the annoying gameplay mechanics that it had would be incredible. Because like the fact that you had iron sights, but they weren't actual, like there was still a chance you could miss, even if you aimed perfectly. I hated that so much. It's like I did this right, and you just didn't let me win.
It's like Far Cry 2 being really like your weapons can jam, and like if you don't maintain your weapons, they can jam and they can like misfire and stuff like that. It's like great. I need this added stress because that's why I play a video game.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think Fallout 4's got that. The gameplay of Fallout 4 and 76 is spot on. There's the storytelling suffered for them to give us that, and that's kind of the problem there. I think if we could get Fallout New Vegas's story with like 76 4's gameplay, you'd probably have the perfect kind of FPS RPG combo.
Nice. My number 4 already been mentioned by Ollie. Say hello to Michael Ironside. Gotta go Sam
Conviction,
Fisher.
Sam.
Gotta go Splinter Cell. Now, I love Conviction.
I like Conviction. It's not a very Splinter Cell game for a lot of it, but it is great.
People do get funny about it. Like I've played them all. I really like the first one. I love Pandora Tomorrow. I'm with you on Chaos Theory. Conviction I love. Blacklist, I get what you mean. I really like the the mechanics of Blacklist
Mm.
and sort of the gameplay of it. But I'm with you in that I miss Ironside when I do it.
All it needs, because Sam was already getting on by that point. He's meant to be like nearly 60 in
Yeah,
Blacklist.
yeah,
Just have him as the new Lambert. Have
yeah.
him on the plane. Have a younger guy played by Eric Johnson. Like, have him.
They must have just thought that this was going to be the point where they reboot it or they do something with it. But it came
Yeah.
out on such the edge of when they were moving to next gen, and
Mm,
all that kind of stuff that it just didn't fit. I still cannot believe that we went through an entire generation of consoles without a Splinter Cell game.
yeah.
Like the last one is 360 and PS3 at that
Yeah.
point.
Didn't they tease
Um,
him in like a Rainbow Six game at
yeah,
some
so
point?
they put a skin of him in Wildlands, and apparently they put a skin of him in Siege. But the
Mm.
thing at the minute that they're working on is a remaster of the first game, which I'll take, but I'd love a fresh new game.
Yeah, that first game with maybe the mechanics of either Blacklist or even if you go a bit further back to Conviction, like those
Yeah.
mechanics in that game, because that game is jank to
Mm.
play these days. It's very clunky.
The one that I've
Uh,
not mentioned is Double Agent, which
because you've
is
got two very different versions of it as
it's
well.
a weird one in that a lot of the gameplay there's the smattering of your sort of third echelon, Sam in the field, all that kind of stuff. But then
Yeah,
more of it is to do with you just creeping around John Brown's army's sort of
yeah,
headquarters and all that kind of stuff. I think I am going to go Conviction, mainly because I think it's the one that I've played the most. Um,
mm,
and love the sort of deniable ops sort of side,
yeah,
like little bits
like the
to it.
prequel. Yeah,
Yeah, and then even the multiplayer stuff where you could play as Archer and Kestrel.
yeah.
I love all that kind of stuff to it.
I
And I
do
think,
like it introduced like getting your own loadouts a bit and getting your own weapons and stuff like
yeah,
that.
and I think the story of it itself is really good.
Yeah, the only thing I don't like is that you can't stealth it, not all the way through. And I feel like you should be able to in a Splinter Cell game.
But I think they've adapted the gameplay enough in that where you can check opponents and
Mhm.
enemies and then just execute them that way. The sort of point and execute stuff. I
Yeah,
think that's really well done.
yes, it's
Um,
excellent. I love that they included that in Blacklist as well.
Yeah, so I really like Conviction. So I would say mine is Splinter Cell Conviction. But that I think with a couple of mine that we're going to get to now, you can't get to that point of conviction without having the stuff that came before it anyway. So it's that idea of, Ollie, like you keep saying, and I think Michael, you've tried to adhere to it too, that you're going to talk series and you're sort of going to force yourself to pin one down.
Yeah,
But really, if you could take the best bits of multiple of them and put them all
yes.
together, you would have a smush. So I'll say conviction, but it is very much this is a pick for Splinter Cell. Um, do we all now need to turn our cameras off and let you speak for half an hour and just go and have a kip, Ollie? Or are you
No, they're very similar. It's not too it won't be long. Like I said, the point of kind of combining them is that ultimately it's a lot of the similar points can be raised up with both of
so
them.
this is your 4 and your 3?
Yeah. So a couple of honorable mentions that might give a clue as to what kind of games I'm talking about. Simpsons Hit and Run and Jack and Daxter 2.
Okay.
And the reason I mention them is because my parents were very strict with video games as I was coming up. And it meant that I did not have the games that these allude to, any of them, until I was 17. I remember the first 18 rated game I ever got was Gears of War. And the logic that my dad gave behind that was there's a mission, you're fighting monsters, it's just a bit bloody, and there's a bit of swearing.
And there's not a chainsaw in the house, so we can trust
Well, yeah, but ultimately, what my dad and my mum were against up until the age of 16 was Rockstar. So my 4 and my 3 are both Rockstar properties, which is why I've kind of lumped them together. I could be persuaded to put these the other way. I've not considered Red Dead 2 because I think it's a fantastic game. I think it is stunning. I think the story is perfect, genuinely perfect for a prequel to do as well of story as that. and to make arguably an even better main character than the first one in Arthur Morgan compared to John Marston is a masterpiece. It just felt a bit too real to me. Like it was very aware of how realistic it wanted to be, and like a lot of the side quest stuff in Red Dead is an absolute chore.
A quick side note: have you heard the Tenacious D song video games?
No.
Right, listen to it later, but there's a whole thing of like it's basically Jack Black saying, "I don't have time for video games. I'm an adult," and then he goes, "Well, maybe a bit of Red Dead Redemption, but that's a jaunt through American history. That's not a game. That's an adult thing." You know, yeah.
So currently the way I've got it right now is at number 4, I've got Red Dead Redemption. And then at number 3, I had for the longest time, and I could be convinced to go back to it, I had Grand Theft Auto 5. Because it is objectively the best of them. I love the angle of having 3 different playable characters, each with their own unique skill sets, and you can build on all of them. I love the setting of Los Santos. I love how alive that city is. I think I've got to go with Grand Theft Auto 4, though. Just because that is the one I was allowed. That's the first Grand Theft Auto I was allowed to own. I'd played plenty of them beforehand, but I didn't manage to get a nostalgic hit in the veins for like 3 Vice City San Andreas in quite the same way. Whereas number 4, and I'm aware it put a lot of people off because it feels very different in the way the cars drive and how the gunplay works.
Disgusting.
Say again?
It's like driving a boat. It's so bad.
I know, but I just so quickly got used to that with all the cars. And maybe it's because it was the first one I played to any real degree. I just got used to it. I got sick at driving. I do think Nico is probably one of the most compelling characters, like certainly playable characters in the GTA series. Like he's
Roman's a bit annoying though.
Do you want to go
don't mind. I think he's annoying just because he's so nice, and you're with Nico in this pit of like hatred. Roman is just trying to pull you out of that, and like
he is, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, and like people like meme him is like, oh, he's constantly calling you, asking if you want to go bowling. You're allowed to say no, and it never negatively impacts the relationship with him. Roman's an absolute boy to the point where like people talk about, playing the game the same way again and again. There's 2 distinct endings to Grand Theft Auto 4. And in one of them, Roman dies. And I never kill Roman because he is my boy. And ultimately, as well, part of the logic is in the version where Roman lives, he is still your friend and Kate dies. Whereas in the version where Roman dies, Kate wants nothing to do with you. So you lose both of them there, whereas you only lose Kate in the other. But I have such nostalgia for it. I think that's got a great soundtrack. It's got nothing on Vice Cities, but Vice City has the advantage of being set in the 80s. So all of the tracks are going to slap. But like the rock channel run by Iggy Pop in that is great. I love the customization. I love the character. I love the little nod to GTA 3 where you can get Claude's outfit. And then Red Dead, I think, is just such a nice, tight, concise story. I can play that from start to finish to this day and still really love the story beats. The mechanics are great. I remember when it was first released, I thought I wouldn't like it because you wouldn't have access to like automatic weapons, but just having rifles and shotguns and pistols is actually, incredible. Yeah, I nearly lumped them together and said, "Screw you, Adam. I don't care. I'm having 2 games in one slot." Like I said, I could be tempted to change it to GTA 5 because I was playing through that again recently. I was like, God, I forgot how good this game is. But I think this is like my one really between that and Crash, these are like my emotional picks, and there was just something about finally being allowed a Grand Theft Auto game and it being everything that I'd hoped it would be, if not better, because like you were compelled to go through the story and you were compelled to get the weapons and stuff like that, and just yeah. So Red Dead Redemption, the first one, because it doesn't try and be too realistic, and Grand Theft Auto 4 because. But yeah, those 2 honorable mentions were just the open world sandbox, kind of drive around and find your way games that I was allowed because they were like rated 7 and 12 by Peggy.
Hit and Run's a good game though.
Hit and Run's a fantastic. I cannot wait for that to be remastered because surely that's coming.
Surely. The
Surely
demand's there
someone's
for it.
working on that. That would fly off the shelves. Hit and Run remastered.
Yeah. Oh, I put a thumb up apparently.
Yeah, you really like that idea.
I
It's
really
a
like
great
that idea. Michael, your number 3, please.
Number 3 was, I think, given away in the last one. It's the other big Bethesda title that isn't Starfield, because that's I'm not going to talk about.
Oh, that's not the one I thought it would be.
You know, what do you think I was going to say? No, I'm not saying Starfield. I'm not talking about Starfield.
Oh.
So the game I've gone for, a lot of people don't agree this is the best one. A lot of people say Morrowind is the best one. And Skyrim's the one I have the most hours in. And I have played Elder Scrolls Online. I have 976 hours in Elder Scrolls Online, in fact. But Oblivion is the game that also convinced me to play Fallout 3. It's the game that made me love open world games.
Holly, is that your number 3 as well?
It's not on my list, but Oblivion is my favorite of the Elder Scrolls games, and most people think it's the worst Elder Scrolls game. So I'm just excited that someone else likes it the best.
Is Oblivion the one? Is Oblivion the one where you literally have a woman like read her line and then says, "Wait, let me do another take," and then does another take in there because it got missed by the editors?
And I'm not sure if that's in there, but it's like at the beginning. You start with Patrick Stewart being the emperor at the beginning. It's this like massive like setting with the huge imperial city that you start off in, and then you go off to all like provinces, and there's just stuff to discover all over the place. Like you can go into a cave and that'll just. And I know Skyrim does this better, and Skyrim absolutely, but it started here, and it's more accessible than Morrowind. I've tried to go back and enjoy Morrowind, and it's just not. And I know people love it for that reason, but the idea that someone go, oh, it's over to the west, and you've just got to travel west, and I hope you see the squirrel that he alluded to, because at that point you turn left until you see the cow, and then you know what I mean. I've just no time for that. I don't. But it's just so good. I replayed that game not that long back. I bought the Game of the Year edition on PC and replayed it. The Shivering Isles expansion with Sheogorath, who is just the most insane. I mean, he is literally the god of madness. But he's just portrayed so well. This person,
Jeez, for everyone,
who you know could just kill you at any moment if that happens to be the funniest possible outcome.
Yeah,
and this character who's kind of, and I think I've said before about the Joker's compelling when he's written this way, where he'll do something against his own interests if that's the funnier choice.
Yeah,
Sheogorath is very much like that. And like I say, that DLC is again like the New Vegas DLCs. It's as good as the main game. It's in some ways better. And I think there's a level of freedom in Oblivion that modern games don't give you. Like the ability to make spells that just break the game because everything dies in one hit. You have to do a lot to do it, but you can do it. You can go to 100% plus Charmeleon or Chameleon, or however you say it. It's not Charmeleon, it's Chameleon, isn't it? Which means enemies just can't see you anymore. So you can just walk around and slash at them with your sword, and because you are literally invisible, because you're over 100%, they won't react in any way. And that just breaks the game entirely and breaks certain things. But they let you do that. They let you have the freedom to kill a character. It's like, yeah, you can't complete the game now because you killed that person and they were important. Some of them you can't do that with, like you can't kill Martin and people like that. But you can lock yourself out of quest because this shopkeeper you killed 6 months ago, well, actually, they were really important and now they're dead. So tough. And I like that in a way because it's like, well, yeah, because this is a real world and there are consequences for going
I'm terrified of games like that. That's why I've never got into Bethesda games, because I know, like, oh, but if I kill that person, what if I need them later?
I mean, in modern Bethesda, you can't do it, but yeah, I think Oblivion has to, even though Skyrim's objectively the better game, gameplay wise, world building wise, Oblivion's
meme-wise.
Yeah, meme-wise. But Oblivion, if that didn't exist, Skyrim wouldn't be what it was. So many of the lessons from Oblivion made Skyrim what it was, and there's a reason that game's been re-released so many times, but I feel like we lost certain freedoms in making that tighter gaming experience. And Oblivion's like the last bastion of a lot of that.
I've never
I
played
don't have
any
any
of the
else.
Elder Scrolls. And
You're missing out. You're so missing out.
I don't know if it's my kind of game. I think that might be why I've not done it. But I don't know. I don't know. There's something about what from I think it's from like an outsider's perspective looking in and just thinking that's going to take up an awful lot of my time.
It's one of I think it's one of those games where it can take you 15 hours if you just do the main story. So, experience the main story. That was really good. Or it can take you hundreds of hours as you go and discover every little bit of it.
Right.
And I do like things like that because when I've not got time, I can just smash a couple of side quests out. And when I've got time to really sit down, I can start working through the main quest.
I'm sending you a video, Michael, with the tagline, "You can thank me later," because you might appreciate what I've sent. It is great. It's excellent.
Right. Number 3. My number 3. I think if you know me, you know that I was always going to get one of these in. I've got to put a wrestling game in there. Now,
Simpsons wrestling.
not a Simpsons wrestling. That was bad. Now the WWE series have been going for years now. And you can go all the way back to something like Here Comes the Pain, which arguably is everyone's favorite. It had a really good roster as well, based on the roster that was on TV at the time. The SmackDown versus Raw series was really good. They had a bit of a dip recently and just before the pandemic, but the more recent games have got better. I'm going with 2K19 purely because that was the last one before it all went to pot. And they had a really good roster. The gameplay was fresh, it was exciting, and really that's the one that when my brother Liam got into it as well. And we used to play. He'd come round and we'd play against each other, and he'd have characters on mine, and we'd sort of create our own players and all that kind of stuff. But I think fundamentally, I think you're not going to get anything out of this unless you are a wrestling fan, because really the majority of what makes it good is this idea that it is a bit of simulation and a bit of a beat 'em up. But some of the matches that you can have on it, if you are a wrestling fan, you're just going to get so much out of it because the sequences now, or the more recent games, work so well. And they feel fresh and they feel like a game. I'm getting a lot of enjoyment out of this year's game. The roster's really good. Just the ability to chuck a chair at someone that they've put back in is fantastic. But yeah, I had to get a wrestling game in there, so I'm going to go for 2K19. But I think that's a sort of all-encompassing. I've played these games for 20 odd years now. It's my series.
2006 was the SmackDown versus Raw. I think it was 2006 was the one where
Yeah,
me and all my friends were proper into it. It was like, for me, that's the golden era of wrestling because that's when I was really into it.
yeah,
You had The Rock, you had Stone Cold Steve Austin, you had the whole like Triple H and Stephanie McMahon drama. They hadn't really admitted that it was fake yet, so you still had people dying and having funerals in the ring and then coming alive again. It was just such a ridiculous era, and that game reflected the ridiculousness of it and was like, it was just so fun to play because if you knew how to play it well and you were playing against someone else who knew how to play it well, it was a real like proper challenge to like beat each other. And I think that's when they started to have the real depth into the fights without being too over. I feel like the new ones for me, they're just a bit too overcomplicated.
Sam said the same thing. He said he wants to pick it up and just play it, whereas these are like you've got to
You got to learn the mechanics for it first.
Yeah.
The only one I ever played was a GBA one. I have no idea which era it was either, but it was like Eddie Guerrero was on there. I think Rikishi was in there as well, to give you a kind of idea of the era. You didn't have Big Show in there, which I was always fuming about, but you did have my boy Kane. I just played as Kane every time because Kane's my favorite rep. Like that one that even Hulk Hogan was scared of. That Kane was just the one who was just an animal, like literally never, like as soon as he got in the ring, everyone else just died. Like he
overpower
was just
everybody.
Yeah, he was like letting Jason Voorhees into the ring. But it was this. I just remember like this really bit crushed series of noises like Slow Chemical, Kane's theme, and like Latino Heat for Eddie Guerrero being bit crushed to hell, and like the sprites for all of the wrestlers like being exactly the same size with different color textures on there. And like again, really bit crushed.
Yeah.
Is cooking.
Does the job. Absolutely does the job. Holly, you're number 3.
This is the like the big RPG that got me into RPGs. And it's BioWare again. But one of their first, so it's Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic,
I'm
which
surprised
is
that's not number one, genuinely.
there were it's a very, very good game. And Michael has already spoken about Mass Effect. I won't go into too much detail, but probably one of the only criticisms I have about Mass Effect is it has this morality system that comes from Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, where in Mass Effect you have Paragon or Renegade, and you're either this like really, really good hero or like a maverick, I'll kill anyone in my way kind of person, but you're still a hero. You're still trying to save the universe. You've still got the same bad guy that you're fighting. In Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, you're not a hero if you go down the dark side route. It is a much broader morality system in this game. And I think I've probably used this story before when we were talking about our favorite Star Wars things. So I apologize if this is a repeated story, but on the very first planet that you're on, which is Taris, in this game, there's a beggar on the street, and there is some men who are like heckling him. And your character, who you make yourself, and it's an RPG, and you can be male or female, look however you want. Your character runs up to this, or you can completely ignore it, but you can run up to this, and then the options that you have in that moment are insane. You can beat up the guys who are heckling and give all your money to the beggar. You can persuade the guys who are heckling to leave and give the beggar a bit of money. You can pay the hecklers to leave and then ask the beggar to pay you back for the money that you've just used to save him. You can join in with the hecklers and steal all the beggar's money. You can kill the hecklers and then kill the beggar and just take his money. The options in that like tiny moment right at the beginning of the game like signify everything else you can do in this game. It's not open world. There are side quests, but you're mostly on a trajectory that you can't slow down. But the options that you have available as you become either a Jedi or a Sith or something grey in the middle are breathtaking. At least they were for me when I played this, and it was the first time I ever played a game like this, where your choices impact on the character and the story to such an extent. The writing is amazing. The side characters are amazing. Shout out to one of my favorite voice actors, Raphael Sparge, whose voice imprinted on me on this game as Ideal Man. If I hear Raphael Sparge's voice anywhere in anything on telly or in a computer game, I'm just like, my husband.
There he is.
I love him.
Yeah, another reason for you to watch Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Do I have
Isn't
to?
That thing that he keeps
I'll
talking
just
about.
find it on YouTube.
One of the best TV series ever.
Thank you, Michael.
So good.
There's another one.
Oh, I thought you meant the film. Oh, I
No.
watched the TV series. Jesus Christ. Yeah.
The animated
Yeah,
show.
the
I would never
animated.
make
Oh.
anybody watch the film.
Oh, okay. I'm very sorry for rolling my eyes. I definitely want to see that. I thought you were talking about the film.
That made it into my top 10 worst films of all time.
Exactly. That's why I want to avoid it. No, I will watch the telly show by all means.
Me and my son every now and again still burst out in the Secret Tunnel song.
Yes.
every now and again we'll just randomly start singing Secret Tunnel at each other. It's just
Yeah.
so good.
I will randomly start crying because I remember Iroh singing Trees from the Blue. Just
Yeah, so
no,
it's
okay.
a heart-wrenching
Right,
moment.
learn why I would cry and learn why Secret Tunnel is a thing.
I
It's
know why
great.
you'll
Cry
cry.
too.
It's
On
because
it.
you're an emotional man.
But yeah, the reason, the big reason why this should be on everyone's radar as a game is the twist is unbelievable.
Pretty
It's
great.
the best twist in Star Wars, and there are plenty of good twists in Star Wars. And again, it's another gaming moment I had with my brother and sister. But at this point, we were a tiny bit older. This was Xbox, so the Dreamcast had died the death, and our parents had decided we could have another games console. And we wanted to actually play this and not just muck about on it. My sister wasn't that into it, but she wanted to watch us playing. So my brother was playing this game with my sister, and then I was playing it afterwards with my sister. Yeah. So my sister
I mean,
knew what was
I
coming.
genuinely feared for George's life with the way that you ran out that door then. I thought, oh my God, something's happened. Not that you'd just gone to get Lego Vader.
No,
Never.
brother. Thank you.
I do apologise. I do apologise.
But there's the twist happened, and I heard them playing it upstairs and screaming and not stopping screaming, and I was like, "Oh my God, what's going to happen?" And then it was my turn to play the game, and they both stayed in the room like this. So I knew something good was coming, but I had no idea what it was. The second game, the sequel, is phenomenal, and is one of the only things in Star Wars that has truly tackled how awful the Jedi mindset is. The Jedi are the bad guy in the second game, not because they become Sith, but because they're Jedi.
Because
They're bad guys in the second game. And that is really, really interesting.
It becomes
It's
part
not
of
like
the course, doesn't it? That all of the media since, all the media since has tackled it. I mean, the prequels did do a very good job of it. They really could have made that a bit of a plot point a bit more, but like, yeah, that was the first to do it, and
yeah,
it is great.
but the first game is wonderful, and just the scope of how you build your character and the choices that are available to you. That's what created a love of RPGs for me.
Nice. All right, number twos. Michael, kicking us off with number two.
So is if you ask Nella what my favorite game of all time is, she will 100% say this game. And the only reason it's not number one, like I said, is due to the ridiculous playtime I have on number one. And the fact that I love it. I had to swap them very because I was like, but I have also, so this game I got is Final Fantasy X specifically. And this is actually the first Final Fantasy game that I played on the PlayStation 2. And until the remake came out on PC, I kept a working PS2. And every time the PS2 broke, I went out and bought a new PS2 to play this game. My brother, Oliver, did exactly the same thing. And Holly said earlier about her parents being angry with like the same music being played over and over again from random. Nella had that exact same experience from listening to me and Oliver play this game, but at opposite ends of the same room that she was watching TV in the middle of as a child, and having no power to make us stop because like I was the older sibling, so I was like, well, no,
I'm fairly certain a couple of weeks ago I had a conversation with Nella where I said, "Oh, we're podcasting over halftime, so we're doing video games," and she said, "Final Fantasy X."
Yeah, it's just so good. Like, and I recently started playing it again, and that made me, while I've been ill, I've got into Final Fantasy 14, and I've completed. And that's, I mean, it's not on this list just because it's so new to me playing it, but that might be one of the best games I've ever played. I think, just it's phenomenal. But Final Fantasy X, because it's my introduction, 7's good. 7's really good, and the remake is fantastic in its own right as well. But Final Fantasy X, there's a little mini game in it called Blitzball. I was going to say Sphere Ball, but it's not. It's Blitzball, which is like rugby / volleyball, but underwater. And it's a ridiculous concept, but it's so fun to play. And right now, I could tell you exactly how to get to all the best players, like as soon as you unlock it in the game. I can tell you the tactics to beat every boss in the game. I can tell you where the secret items are. I used to have the official guide to it, and I don't have it anymore because I essentially could recite it to you because I've played that game so many times. It's just, and all Final Fantasy games are really good on the storytelling. And I think Final Fantasy 14 is like the epitome of that because they've been able to tell one story across 10 years. But yeah, it's just fantastic. And it's the reason that, like, I think if you sing the Final Fantasy victory music around Nella, she'll have a visceral reaction to it because she's heard it so many times in her life.
Oh dear. Well, my number two, I'm going to be
Hang on, before we
probably.
go, we've
Oh,
got
here we
to.
go.
If you're getting Final Fantasy X in there, you got to get the Tidus laugh in there, surely.
Didn't hear a
Oh,
word of that.
I'll be honest, the half-hour laughing scene is like people always got a half-hour laughing scene, and it genuinely does to me. Well, it does. The scene's half an hour and about 5 minutes of them laughing at each other. I do think the biggest issue with that on replayed is the fact that you can't skip cutscenes because some of them are just a bit annoying. And when you can repeat them word for word, like I can close my eyes and watch them now if I want to, because I've seen them burned into my brain. Yeah, and all the future games do, because they know that people replay them, do have the option to skip cutscenes now. And I think 10's the last one that didn't have it and had full CGI long cutscenes.
Right, my number two. I'm going to be brief with my number two because Ollie's already mentioned it, but a bit too far down his list, if I'm honest. Arkham City. Now Arkham Asylum was fantastic, and Arkham Asylum, for whatever reason, is the one that comes up on lists when you Google things like greatest video games of all time and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. But City just took it and ran with it, and expanded the world like we say that all best sequels should do. The addition of characters as well, so the addition of Catwoman and all that kind of stuff. The iceberg lounge stuff with Penguin's really good. Um, and like I sort of mentioned about Night on the last one. I don't mind Night, but I think City is a much better story. City makes so much more sense. I think the thing that at Night had going against it is that we all knew that it was going to be Jason Todd. There was no sort of like surprise element there to it. The sort of the guts that they had for City of making sure that Hugo Strange was a main villain. But
Yeah.
again, still having that sort of reliance on Joker. Um, the one quibble that I have, and I suppose this is with the law rather than the game, is I went into this Raz Al Ghul, Raish Al Ghul.
Yeah, it's Raish.
Is it Raish?
It's Raish. It's what
It's
Kevin
Ra's al
Conroy
Ghul,
says, therefore it's Raish.
it's like the Americanized version of it. So it's like basically if you Americanize the name, but yeah, if you say it like usually when it's an actual character who's like speaking it properly, they'll say Ra's al Ghul.
Because
Even in like I think this is picked up in the Arrow TV show. A lot of the
yes,
American cast say Ra's al Ghul, but all the ones who are actually in the League of Assassins, they all say Ra's al Ghul.
right. Because the whole like obviously I know more from Nolan's Batman Begins
Yeah.
where they say Raz,
But that's because he's
but
played by an American, isn't it? Well, he's played
yeah,
by. Is he American?
No, he's Irish. It's Liam
it's
Neeson.
Neeson, yeah.
Is he? Oh, he's Irish. But it's because he's played by a white man. He shouldn't be played by a white man because he's not a white man. Like that character isn't a white character.
The bait and switch with Ken
But,
Watanabe, weren't it, at the beginning? But
Yeah.
I love Arkham City. I think it's a fantastic game. I played them all again recently when I got my PS5 and we were in lockdown. And it was just like, yeah, I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna play all these again. Yeah, love it.
I love that introduction of the Riddler's informant and like that mechanic of in a fight, you're trying to keep some of them a lot like that last one as the last man standing, which is just an added wrinkle to the combat.
Yeah, it's
Especially if
all
he
that
ends up
sort
picking
of
up.
the world's greatest detective and you going around being a detective.
Yeah,
Yeah, in all the side quests. Yeah.
it does fit. Like I love that feeling, and the interview tapes as well with Hugo Strange. I love all of those. I love that the only one that Hugo doesn't get to at all is Joker.
Mm.
Because Joker's just like, yeah, I don't care.
Yeah,
Whereas like
Sam.
Riddler breaks down upset, Harvey Dent breaks down upset, Freeze is upset from the beginning, Catwoman ends up upset. And like the way you unlock those interview tapes as well, it's really
Yeah.
it just it's quite natural in terms of like encouraging you to explore the environment and get the collectibles and stuff like that. It's so good.
Yeah. Holly, your number 2, please.
I briefly spoke about this game developer. So it's by LucasArts, and it's 1998 adventure game called Grim Fandango.
Yes.
This game is just so good. It is about your character is called Manny Calavera. He is a skeleton who is a travel agent in the land of the dead. So the law is essentially Mexican Day of the Dead law. These travel agents are Grim Reapers who come and collect people from the lands of the living, bring them down to the lands of the dead where they're just skeletons. And then if they've been good in their life, their goodness translates to money in a bank account. And they can use that money to pay for a cruise across the lands of the dead to get to the afterlife, or a bullet train that takes them straight there, or a sports car where they can use to drive across and get to the afterlife quite quickly. Or if they've not been so good and they don't have a lot of money, they might only be able to afford a compass or a walking stick, or they might not be able to afford anything at all. And so then they just kind of hang around. And the land of the dead has become like a country with built up towns and cities, because there are so many people trying to get their way across the lands of the dead with no morality money, and have just like stopped and opened a bar, and have been there for hundreds or thousands of years, because they're too scared to actually get to the underworld, the afterlife on the other side. And it's all modeled after Casablanca. So Manny Calavera sounds like Humphrey Bogart a bit. He dresses like him. He opens a bar, and it's just like Rick's, and it has the casino in it, and there's a character just like the female character is just like Bergman in Casablanca. But then there are all these little other elements from Mexican folklore and superhero comics, and it's such a weird mishmash blend. And the time when I was speaking about a really surreal game was in the first half when I was talking about Psychonauts, the same people. It's kind of the evolution from point and click adventures. So it's not point and click, you are moving your character around, but there is a lot of like picking up random stuff and then combining that stuff in your inventory and then using it to scare a pigeon who's going to hit a clock, and then that's going to change the time, and then someone's going to come out of the shop early because they think the time is this, and then you can steal something. It's like weird chain of events stuff that you're doing in this game. But the storyline, the writing, and the characters is wonderful. It is so funny. It's so funny. I love every character in it. The bad guys are bad. The bad guys are evil. Like this whole kind of mobster aesthetic thing comes into it later, and the guns you shoot have fertilizer in them. So they kill skeletons because you shoot them with fertilizer and they suddenly grow fungus and flowers and just like fall to the ground, and that's how you kill someone in the land of the dead. And that becomes a big part of the plot. There's someone called the gardener who's the biggest mobster in the underworld, obviously. It's very, very funny. It's old now, and the graphics are not great. But if you can get past that, it's the best adventure game out there.
LucasArts games of that time were wild, like Secrets of Monkey Island and Sam and Max.
They
Like they
knew
were
what they were
so
doing.
funny.
They knew what they were doing. They are very, very good games. But this is the best one.
Nice. Oliver, your number.
I mean, I was going to intro this with, oh, Holly, Star Wars, you say, but she's since talked about another game, so it doesn't quite have the same vibe with it anymore. There are so many things I could have picked for this because, like, I love pretty much every Star Wars game I've ever played. I remember a janky Episode 1 on PlayStation being my favorite game ever because it was the first game I ever had a lightsaber, and even though that's all you did with it, and it was broken and ugly. Star Wars Bounty Hunter felt like a GTA game to me, even though it absolutely wasn't. It was a very linear kind of almost Tomb Raider-y experience. Jedi Starfighter, Episode 3's movie tie-in. I nearly put Force Unleashed because I absolutely spent hours on Force Unleashed. Love the narrative of it. Love that it gave Sam Witwer an into the Star Wars universe, and he's just doing absolute bits with it these days. You know, he's now Darth Maul, or the voice of at the very least. But I had to go with Fallen Order. I'm playing it again now. I've actually upped the difficulty on my new game plus for once, so I'm now on Jedi Master. My God, it is brutal. I remember the moment I was playing, because I was used to that kind of, if you're a Jedi, you just kind of own everything on the screen, and it's almost like not Bayonetta, it's almost like is it Dragon Blade, the one where you just fight like 50 people at a time and you own them all. This is the closest. I don't want to make the comparison because it's lazy, but it is diet Dark Souls, this game. It is much, much easier than any kind of Soulsborne game. I'm not under any illusions.
So it's a Witcher 3 for me, in that the combat can go really hard, but you are just so overpowered that once you master the moveset, it actually doesn't matter what the difficulty is anymore. Putting on a lower difficulty once you've learned to play that game is like, I may as well just have a nap because nothing can beat me now. It's just, and the hard mode becomes a dance that you know the moves to. It's so good.
It should, I just noticed like on because I played it on Jedi Knight, and that felt a bit brutal and unforgiving at times. But you're right, once I got used to it at that point, so I thought this
so
time
satisfying.
You feel great doing it. It's so rewarding. So I've actually tried it on Jedi Master this time, and like I got killed by the most basic enemy in the game doing this one. Like I got to a point where I could get through Fallen Order without dying once on Jedi Knight. So I thought, right, well, this time I'll up the difficulty. But you're right, and I'm thinking a lot more about which skill I unlock in the skill tree. I'm actually using that force slowdown a lot more than I did in previous playthroughs. It is making me better at the game. I love the story. I love the acting from everyone. I love the character. I love the Mantis feels like the first ship since the Millennium Falcon, really, to have an awful lot of personality in and of itself. I love the organic way that you explore these massive open areas. I occasionally get annoyed by the lack of ability to fast travel, but I understand what the game is going for, not giving you that option. And it does force you to kind of remember the best route to get from here to here. And it helps with your understanding of the game as a result of it. I love the customization options. I never have him in a poncho. I hate the poncho look.
Poncho's too far.
Oh, I know. I'm forcing myself as well this time, because I always have a red lightsaber whenever possible, even with a character like Cal, who's ostensibly just not remotely
because
evil.
You are a Sith, that's why.
I think I'm a dark Jedi. I don't think I'm a Sith.
You're a Sith Lord.
I think I'm a dark Jedi.
Or a stiff, like I said on the Star Wars.
Revenge of the Stiff, indeed.
Yeah.
But this time I'm forcing myself to play through with a green blade, because if I'm going to be a Jedi, it's got to be a green blade. Like that's the Jedi color. I don't care. Like blue is overrated. Go over it.
Purple is the Jedi color.
No, that's the
colour that you
Samuel L.
use.
Jackson color. Only Mace
Exactly.
Windu is allowed a purple lightsaber. Only him. It's
Cal
special for him.
Kestis.
I've not started Jedi Survivor yet.
Yeah, this is the one I was alluding to before. I reckon Jedi Survivor, when I eventually play it, could be my number one based on what
Yeah.
everyone said about it, based on the additions to customization, based on the new forms of lightsaber combat. Because I know, do you remember the bit in towards the end of Fallen Order where you get the twin saber mode?
Yeah.
They wanted that to be a fully fledged stance.
Right.
Similar to like single versus double, like you can permanently have a double lightsaber out, and they wanted to do that with twin lightsabers, but they didn't have enough time to work it, so they just made it a move that did a lot of damage but took up a lot of force. I feel very intelligent playing Fallen Order. I feel like I'm good at game. I'm not that good. I'm like Holly. I'm like one of those people who likes to play things on like a normal difficulty. I'm not necessarily going into a game looking to, get good as it was. I'm never going to be into stuff like Dark Souls and Bloodborne and Sekiro and stuff like that. But I respect people who are good at that. But this is my proudest platinum trophy by far. Getting a platinum trophy on a game like this that is geared to being harder, and it doesn't hold your hand that much, and it does, force you to play it intelligently. That was quite a proud platinum for me, and getting all the way through and unlocking all the movesets. And we've talked as well, Michael, like it's one of the best Darth Vaders in modern media. Like the way he just comes in and steamrolls you.
That is for me, that's the best. The fact that Cal is so good,
Mm.
he is like ridiculously overpowered, yet Darth Vader is still so good that you're literally not even an opponent to him.
You can't even get a
flies
hit on
are
him.
so
It's not
good.
even that you can't beat him, you can't get a
And
hit on him.
You suddenly see that you get why the universe fears him,
Yeah.
because he is a terrifying opponent.
Mm.
And I think that game gets that across so well. Because even as this massively overpowered character, you are essentially one of the guys in that hallway in Rogue One, except you've got the opportunity to run away and they didn't.
Yeah.
But you're that much of a threat to him.
Having said that, I did enjoy wailing on him as Star Killer as well.
Star Killer's like a kind of a he's just ridiculously over, like to a point that within the Force he's overpowered, isn't it?
Yeah, he is. Like if the idea that he would die, especially the way he does in that first game, is laughable. Like, no. They had to just find a way for him to die at the end so that
I think it's hard to have a character that powerful continuously in the universe.
He would have single-handedly stopped the Empire had he continued to live. And I get that. And that's one of the things I don't like about Force Unleashed, is that they kind of retcon him back into existence. Even though the gameplay is better for the most part, I actually don't, although I don't like the fight with Darth Vader in that game is terrible. But yeah, like all of the fact that you have to think about every encounter, and I've noticed as well on the harder difficulties, one thing that they do, the enemies do not wait their turn. They will gang up on you, and I am not a fan of that. Like I've never had to use the area of effect attacks anywhere near as much, because the enemies aren't afraid to. Oh, this one I'm ready to perfectly. Oh no, you're going. Oh Jesus, that's not fair. You do this one at a time. That's how we roll, guys. Why are you not going one at a time? That's not okay. I'm not looking forward to getting to Dathomir based on how this playthrough is currently going. I think Dathomir is going to kick my arse repeatedly. Because Dathomir is still tough on Jedi Knight difficulty, but I cannot wait to, I'm actually getting to the point where I can afford a PS5. No, I'm not going to get a gaming rig, Michael. Get over it. But I'm finally getting to that point where I can afford a PS5 and I can because I think Spider-Man would probably be on this list somewhere had I played it. And I think Jedi Survivor could be my number one, just because of my affinity with Star Wars and everything positive I've already heard about Jedi Survivor as a game. But there is one game. Adam might know what it is.
I was just thinking through of like, could I make a guess? But like Michael's, I haven't got a clue on. I think I know Holly's, and I think I know yours.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I think I know yours as well. I know.
you probably do.
Yeah, I know. I know the franchise. I don't necessarily
Yeah,
know the title.
yeah. Well, I'm gonna kick us off with my number one. Um, Again, I'm stopping myself from doing the thing that I did on the World Cinema one, where I'm going, it's the raid, but it's the raid one, and it's the raid two. It's The Last of Us, and I'm not gonna do the it's one and it's two. It's The Last of Us two. Um, the first one is fantastic. The first game is fantastic. And this was when I finally made the switch over from Xbox to PlayStation. The Last of Us was one of the games where it was like, right, well, I need to play that thing because I've never played that thing before. Um, and I did it. I've done it 3 times now. The first time was just a sort of straight through, let's play the game. The second time was like the new game plus whatever they want to call it, where it was just going through and making sure that I got all the collectibles and all that kind of stuff. And then this time I've done the remastered version, which looks phenomenal. It really does. And that it's the Joel and Ellie story, and it's the story that I feel like now, especially with the show, like me and Ollie doing every episode reactions, and me having seen the show, like I think in the end I saw that 3 times because it was I watched it, and then I watched it before we did the episode, and then I watched it with
Mhm.
Amy. Like I know that story like the back of my hand. If I was going on Mastermind tomorrow, that's probably the thing
They
that
were
I
so
would do.
raw for me as well because I literally the way we shot that I had to literally come home, watch the episode, and then I get
Yeah,
straight on the podcast with you.
literally as soon as you've watched it,
You
let's
had
talk
all
about
these notes, and I was just blind reacting.
it. But then when I played the second one, and I'm gonna try and refrain as much as possible to spoil stuff about the second one because I know that there are people that won't have played it who are listening, but fundamentally there are people who are waiting for series two and they're not gonna know things. And like the one person that I'm trying to shield the most from this stuff is Amy. Is that
Yeah,
she only knows the series,
yeah,
and
same with Georgia.
there's so much stuff that Christ Almighty is gonna knock her for six when it happens.
So I saw a Lad Bible article recently, and it's like fans are concerned as Pedro Pascal has finished filming, what, 3 weeks in? And I'm just like,
I can't. Yeah, yeah.
how do
Um,
you think? No. How do you think Georgia feels? Because Pedro Pascal is now big, main daddy vibes,
yeah, yeah,
number
yeah, yeah.
one. Number one. And it's the one time she's ever done this. She has apologized to me because I've been banging the Pedro Pascal hype train drum ever since Game of Thrones. Ever since he played Oberyn Martell, I've been banging the drum for Pedro Pascal, and she's looked me in the eye and said, "Ollie, I'm so sorry. I get it now."
I just
And
when I play the second one because I'm going through the second one again at the minute. I wonder how they're going to do it because it's so vast and it's so big, and that it's almost like one game until the point where you start playing as Abby, and then when you start playing as Abby, it's something else. And I'm thinking, is it best to do it where you have essentially a season on Ellie and then a season on Abby, or is
yeah,
it better
or
where you sort
alternate
of
episodes,
mix?
something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. But like because there's points where with Abby one character will pop up and you've not seen them in ages. And I just think about the sort of dramatic impact that that would have in a series where all of a sudden that person comes back. But the second game, like I remember I was texting Matthew, my brother-in-law, during this because he's the fan. He's the person who like when I said that I was going to start playing it, he was like, "Right, you need to tell me everything. You need to tell me what you're up to."
Yeah.
And I said, "I've just bumped into Ellie." No, I've just bumped into Abby, and he was like, "Oh God." Um, and then after he said like, "Tell me how you feel about Abby," and I was like, "I really enjoyed playing as her, but I totally get that we're positioned initially not to like her." Um, but then her whole arc with the Seraphites and with Lev, and Yara I cannot wait to see that. and just the culmination of it at the end. Like, I'm so looking forward to see how they do it as a series,
Yeah, me
especially if the
too.
first season's got anything to do by it. But the game, I remember finishing it and just I think it took me like 24 hours or something like that to finish it. And I don't mean that as in sort of like, oh, I did it in a day. Like it was like 3 weeks of doing 2 hours a day. I mean, like
Yeah.
I had COVID during the time I was doing it. But I remember sort of coming out of it and going, that is the best game I've ever played. Like easily, easily the best game I've ever played. So my number one, The Last of Us 2. I have had a text from downstairs saying FYI it's 12:30 because I told Amy that I'd be done for 12. So Holly, what's your number one?
Um, yeah, it's Mass
Yeah,
Effect.
yeah.
I also struggled to choose which one because it is such a cohesive story through 1, 2, and 3. The fact that you create your character, you make those choices, and then those choices stick with you, and the same character sticks with you. I haven't experienced that in any other game. Obviously, other BioWare games like Dragon Age have an element of that, but you have 3 separate protagonists across the 3 games. Having the same character and those choices follow you just makes it so immersive. It's by far the most immersive, um, series of games that I've ever played. I uh, I have played it through start to finish probably 4 or 5 times. So it's not loads and loads and loads, but I have to choose the exact same choices every time. My
Hmm.
character looks the same every time because Commander Shepard is a person to me. It's not, they're not a concept that I can muck with. The first time I made my Commander Shepard and made those choices, that's what that story is. And I just want to experience that story again. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love those characters. I cry my heart out when I'm playing 3. Um, with all of the endings that the little different characters have, where things end up for them. But I'm going to choose one as my favorite. I heard someone explain it as the first one is a murder mystery. The second one is like uh, a western, where you're creating a crew, you're building up a crew, so like the
It's a heist.
doesn't know, yeah. And then the third one is a war, um, and that makes sense to me. The first one, the story is much smaller.
Hmm.
You are
The
on the
world's
hunt
built in
for
number one.
someone. Sorry.
When it's built, the world gets built out in number one. Though when it gets built out, you're discovering this new world in number one.
Yeah,
Whereas in number two, there's an expectation that you already know.
yeah.
Hmm.
And I completely understand your choice of 2. I think the majority of fans like 2 the best because the characters are so good in 2. They're so, so good. All their side quests are so good. But yeah, the plot is so tight in 1. And that moment when you first speak to Harbinger um, in 1 blew my mind. The idea that humans are nothing, we're nothing, we're a speck, we can't make any kind of changes, we can't have any impact. There is something much, much, much bigger, much, much, much older that we can't even comprehend that is happening in the universe. How do we fight against that? I really liked that concept. I thoroughly enjoyed the third game, but it didn't quite pay off on that promise, just not quite.
That's the common
I'm not
criticism, isn't it? It didn't stick the landing.
Yeah, I'm not a massive hater of 3. 3 has some of my favorite moments in the series in it, but yeah, the ending, they built up something amazing, and the ending was good, in my opinion.
I was
So it
just
did
looking at
come down.
the
Um,
remaster. What's the remaster like?
Really
really
good.
good, really,
Mm.
really good.
Yeah.
You just
They
fix a lot of the gameplay issues.
Yeah, they're not messing with the story, as they shouldn't, because it's superb. But when I finish playing this game, I genuinely feel a small amount of grief.
Hmm.
Like I am not myself for a few days afterwards. I feel really bad because those characters, games are so immersive because there's a part of you in, especially if you're making choices for your character, there's a part of you that is in there with them going through all the stuff. And I know that sounds stupid, but that's why I love video games. And I never feel more invested in that world than with BioWare games, which are either 3 on my list. I'm very sorry. But this one is just wonderful. And also Raphael Sbarge's voice is in it, and he's my space husband.
Sbarge.
Ollie, I'm
Mhm.
going to assume we're Tsushima.
We are Ghost of Tsushima, yes. Again, played it recently. It is, in every sense of the word, stunning. I know I'm on limited hardware right now compared to what is available, but I have not played a game that looks anywhere near as gorgeous. The way they capture just these sweeping landscapes of rural feudal Japan, like the color palette, the way they incorporate that in is stunning. Jin Sakai is one of my favorite video game protagonists ever. And that kind of theme that I wish was in Star Wars a bit more, and we've kind of played with a bit more of the Jedi being the problem rather than the villain, the problem, because they're too dogmatic, because they're too rigid, because they're too inflexible. And the way this story pans that out with the samurai instead is beautiful. They make a villain that you absolutely despise in Khoton Khan, played fantastically by Patrick Gallagher. The combat system is incredibly tight. The way you've got to adapt to the different enemies with the different types of weapon is incredible. The way you can still act like a samurai and everything and just go in and charge in is like, face me, and then fight them all fair and square, but then they're going to gang up on you. Versus if you go in all sneaky like and ghost like. It was the feudal Japanese ninja Assassin's Creed game that people have been asking for years. And Ubisoft said again and again, no, we're never going to do it. Side note, they've now said they're doing it. They've actually broken, they've said they're going to do an Assassin's Creed game set in Japan. So they finally realized, all right, fine, we'll give you a ninja game for Christ's sake. But this has kind of already done it, and I don't see how they really top it. The different stat, like it's the right flavor of RPG for me, insofar as you've got different armors which give you different effects for your character. So that you've got some that increase your stealth, you've got some that increase your defense, you've got some that increase your resolve, which is the healing mechanic in this, and the special moves mechanic. So when you get hit, you can use resolve to just be like, oh, I need to keep going, and your health goes back up, but your resolve runs out as you get more injured, as in like you're losing motivation to fight. But you get that, it's similar to Star Wars. You can't just keep spamming the Force. You've got to get hits in to build that meter up to then be able to use the stronger attacks. So it's a nice little risk reward. The outfits are massively customizable. And the themes of the story as well, and the way they incorporate in like the emotional beats coming in from the music. The final boss of the main game, I don't know whether to go into spoil. I mean, no, it's not that old a game. The final boss of the main game is heartbreaking. It is one of the most heartbreaking final bosses. You don't want to be going through with it, and you just do. The expansion pack as well on Icky Island is unbelievable. Because you then fight against a character called the Eagle, and she's a shaman, and she gives you a drug which basically unlocks all of your deepest fears and all of the things that you have all this like unrepressed, and it's this beautiful metaphor for like overcoming trauma and dealing with grief and dealing with guilt. Like the subtext and the undertones of what you're doing whilst you are ultimately fighting off this horrific invasion force. And this is, Georgia will roll her eyes if you ask her, this is the biggest emotional gut punch I've ever had in any game, because it kind of came out of the blue for me. There's a point where you get arrested and you have to escape from the castle that you're being held at, and you make your way, like, without hurting anyone because you've got no weapons, you make your way to your horse. And as you're escaping, your horse gets hit by a bunch of arrows. But your horse just keeps running, just keeps on running, and you're passed out, and the horse is like hobbling along, and it's got 3 arrows sticking out of its hindquarters, and the music is telling you to be very sad. And eventually you fall off your horse, and your horse waits until that moment to keel over, and you wake up and you hold your horse's head. I'm welling up now. You hold your horse's head in your arms and you say, "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you," and then it just cuts to black, and you come to, and there is a giant grave, and you can visit that grave later, and it has the title "A Loyal Friend's Grave." And I heard the music and I saw these visuals, and I wanted to stop playing because I was just done. They killed my horse. You pick your horse at the beginning, you name him, you give him a nice, pretty saddle to make him look excellent. He comes when you call him, he's an absolute boy, and he dies. And I'm just like, and when you go to Wiki later, there's a point where you get these like kind of contextual flashback triggers. And one of them is a horse riddled with arrows, and you go and you interact with it, and you look really sad, and like a vision of your dead horse comes up and nuzzles you to be like, "Are you all right? I'm still here." And it's just no, it is stunning. It is an absolutely gorgeous game, and the way it like gets rid of any kind of hub, the way it makes you organically explore by like using the wind as a waypoint, and you've got to follow like animals to get to like things that up your XP or cosmetic items or new missions. You've got to look out in the distance for like smoke plumes, and it's just gorgeous. And I like there's rumors as well circulating, like they've started like Sucker Punch, the studio, have like hired a bunch of people. So there's a lot of people thinking they're working on a sequel, and if one comes, it cannot come soon enough for me. I am so I'm genuinely more hyped for that than I am for like GTA 6 because it was just that mind-blowingly, stunningly. If you haven't played it, it is one of the best narratives out there. Like in terms of like you don't have that much control over it. So if you like to control the narrative, like in a Mass Effect, it's not going to be as rewarding because it is a very linear narrative. But the story it tells is just fantastic. The characters are all great. They're all well acted. They're all beautifully performed. You hate the characters you're meant to hate. You love the characters you're meant to love. And you mourn the characters that you're meant to mourn. It's beautiful.
So emotional, man.
I will not apologize for that. I was
I
equally sad.
I don't want you to apologize.
I was equally sad when the horse
Story
died.
flashbacks, aren't we?
Bing
One
bong.
of us is back in that swamp.
Michael, go on then. Wrap us up. What's your number one?
So my number one is obviously it's going to be an RPG, but I do play a lot of MMORPGs, and I've played all the big ones. If you ask me right now, the best one you could play today, it's Final Fantasy XIV, because I'm still in right now in mourning over the fact that the story of that is over until the new expansion comes out. That's my current obsession. But to put into perspective why I've chosen the one I've chosen as the like number one game, I have 624 hours played on Final Fantasy XIV, 976 on Elder Scrolls Online, about 1,500 on Guild Wars 2, 739 on Destiny 2, and I have 1,800 on my Paladin alone on World of Warcraft, and at least 5,000 hours played. And I still haven't experienced everything that game has to offer. I started playing it in 2012 at a time when I had just been made redundant and just come out of a 4-year relationship. I was at a proper like low point in my life.
You were that guy in the episode of South Park.
I 100% was that guy, 100%. And I've just never actually fully stopped playing it since then. I've already pre-ordered the next expansion. I've also pre-ordered it for Nella and Steven because I want them to play it as well. And I'm still trying to get them into it. I've gone back and played Warcraft Classic because I never played that when it came out. So I've also got hundreds of hours in that. I've got hundreds of hours in the hardcore kind of remake of the first one, where if you die, your character gets deleted. And I've died multiple times at like level 30 plus. It's got 20 years of development, and it's like I would not I'd struggle to recommend this as a game to get into now if you don't know you like games like that, because there's just, like I say, I've done all those hours and I'm probably, I don't know, at least 20-30% of the game I've still never played, because it's just ridiculously big.
I'd
Final
like to
Fantasy
think you
14,
were there.
very
I'd like
similar.
to think you were there for Leroy Jenkins.
I wasn't, unfortunately. That's proper classic WoW, that. But no, it's just, and it's a shame that it isn't as good as it once was. I mean, it's getting better though. They've changed the development team stuff, and I've already pre-ordered an expansion because I'm confident it's going to get better. But it's just like there's just so much to it, and like Warcraft 3, the RTS game, I remember really like, I played that game once on the one time that my foster parents let me use the family PC. And like I was playing that, and then their son came home, their actual son, and he was angry that I was enjoying the game that he enjoyed. So I was never allowed to play that again, ever. I wasn't even allowed to use the PC again. And then eventually I got my own laptop and I got that game myself. And then World of Warcraft is this universe, like, but you can go anywhere and you can meet anyone. And I think it was like, just, there was no way I wasn't going to love this game. And I think it could even get really bad and I'd still play it just to do the story. And then I just wouldn't do the no life. I'll probably never do the no life side of it again because I just don't have time anymore. But back like through university, I put a ridiculous amount of hours into that game, as is evident from my total playtime. But yeah, it's just, yeah, it's so good. And I think it is. There's a reason it's the like genre defining MMORPG. Everything that's been made since has an element of it in there somewhere. It's like key to the DNA of that entire genre of games.
Wow, that's so much. That's so long. Like,
I know, that's bad.
I can't fathom that. Like,
Trying to think of the
That
homework.
is over a decade though.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like it comes up now on the PlayStation now when you've been playing certain games. When Ruby's began to clock it, and she'll sort of stand there and she'll go, 58 hours. And I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
you
the
sweet
rookie
summer child.
what?
I've got 200 hours in Pal World, and that only came out like 3 months ago. To be fair, I have been like almost bedridden.
I need
like
to have a look at my PlayStation and see what my timings are, if it tells you that readily, because I'd be curious to see what my FIFA times are, because it'll be obscene.
No, it's just ridiculous.
It'd be way too much. I'm thinking my homework as well, so I need to just nut up and buy The Witcher. I know The Witcher 3. I know I do. I know I'd enjoy it once I get into it.
I've got
And there's
my
been a
eye
HD
on
remake now too that looks really
Yeah.
good as well.
I've got my eye on the Mass Effect Legendary Edition because apparently that's all 3 games.
I'm trying to think what it is from Adams. Would it just be The Last of Us? But I'm scared. The clicker. I don't want to come against the
Stop
clickers.
being a wimp and play The Last of Us.
I don't want to. I got no idea from Halls. Maybe Knights of the Old Republic, but I feel like RPG is always terrified
I've never
me.
played that, and the reason I've never played it is because the big twist was spoiled for me. And I'm just like, I'm to this day angry at that person. I'll never forgive them ultimately. But there was going to be a remake coming out, wasn't there, that they've since cancelled? And I think it's because they know they can't recap. There's no way EA won't make a disappointing remake. They're just
they cancelled the Mandalorian
company.
game as well, didn't they?
Yeah, and I think it's just because they've realised with Star Wars that they either need to make a casual game for the casual fans, like Battlefront, which is a fun casual game. The space battles are really fun. But the big single player RPGs have always been really good. And I think they know they're just not the studio to capture that anymore with the profit margins that they want with selling skins and that multiplayer games provide that single player games don't.
What's the next one they're doing? Is it Eclipse?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
There's a new one coming out, and you play like a Han Solo type. I think it's Eclipse. I'm gonna look it up.
Oh, I don't know what you mean. It's a bit open world RPG.
Time.
Yeah,
Time, gentlemen, please, before you start talking about Star Wars, because otherwise it'll add another hour on.
I think the big winner of this podcast though is single player games.
Yes.
Oh,
Indeed.
100%,
You know,
yeah.
there are we've
Don't
said
say the
some
dead, because they
online
definitely ain't.
multiplayer, but single player is still where our hearts are. And the
And I
gaming
don't think we're
industry really
unusual
needs
there.
to listen.
Yeah. I think they're starting to. I think that's why we got things like Star Wars Fallen Order
And Baldur's Gate.
and Baldur's Gate. Yeah, and I think the run.
God
I'm
of War,
hoping
yeah,
the
like
runaway
God of
success
War swept up the awards as well, and
the fact that Hogwarts Legacy was massive. Like I don't know if Warner Brothers would have turned a profit this year without that game.
I kept
And
trying
again, it's
it,
all
but
the
I
Harry
just
Potter.
couldn't. I couldn't get into it. But
It is
yeah,
good, you know.
yeah,
It is good. I mean, it's one of those things that like I hate talking about it because of J.K. Rowling and
yeah.
how horrific a person she's turned out to be. But I feel that Harry Potter, it's one of those universes where I feel like because I love it so much, I have to just
You have to
ignore
go
her.
on. Yeah.
And I hate that she profits from it. I really do. But
but Frank Herbert was a raging homophobe as well. Like a lot of people who build these great worlds are terrible people, and it's not cognitive dissonance to recognize both of those facts. Like Baron Harkonnen is meant to be this effeminate, predatory, flouncing homosexual man, and that's the reason he's a villain in the book for Jude, which is why Stellan plays him just so cold and evil, because Denis was clearly like, we're not doing that.
Right.
We're not doing that.
We're done. We're wrapping up. I
We're done.
apologize for the runtime.
Like and subscribe, people in podcast
The
land.
clock in the corner is 3 hours and 56.
Yeah. We apologize to everyone except Sam.
Well, Sam might go on a drive soon. He can drop in.
I don't
Right.
think Sam knows that he can listen to a podcast and do other things at the same time.
No.
I
Sam's
think that's his
very.
problem.
He
Just
focuses.
sits at his table like that,
Yeah.
looking at the wall.
Yeah. It's time ticking away. Can't move yet. Right. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. Stay safe, look after each other, and we will see you next time.